What if the biggest threat to a better future is within our own minds?
Sorry, you can't think your way into sunshine and rainbows. The world is literally a hot mess, and it's only getting hotter, soon to reach peak dumpster fire levels. The American dream is dead, half the country is delusional, conflict is taking over the globe, everything is trash.
That sounds like my inner cynic, yep.
I say you give up. Stop striving, face the fact that we're all screwed, and just lie flat.
Yes, I know you're very good at that.
It's a talent of mine.
The thing is, pessimism is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you've already decided that we're screwed, then you won't take the actions necessary in order to get us unscrewed. Yes, there's plenty wrong with the world, and when we choose to focus on everything that's terrible, then it's easy to despair. But we have other choices. We could choose to have hope.
Ha! Hope is for suckers. We tried hope in 2008 and it got us nowhere.
Sid, you got nowhere because you stayed on the couch.
Rude? No one asked you?
Hey, I get to take up space in Ahsante's brain just like you do, and I say that hope isn't naive, it's necessary. If we want a better future to be an option, then we first have to believe in its possibility. Without hope, the future doesn't exist. Having that hopeful vision for a better future is what gives us the courage and stamina and ability to keep moving forward.
But can you really look at someone who's suffering in a terrible situation and just tell them to look on the bright side? Isn't that cruel?
What's cruel is to project an eternity of suffering on someone when you don't know what the future holds, and you don't know what that person is capable of. Assuming that someone who's been victimized is now automatically weak and helpless and destined to a life of misery is insulting. We have the power to fight abusive systems and resist those who try to oppress us in big ways and in small ones. You're more powerful than you think. And I'm not saying that people should just look on the bright side. That's not what hope is. Hope is not an uninformed faith that ignores reality. I like to think of myself as a realist.
Okay, so if hope isn't just being optimistic, then what is it?
Well, here's what I've been thinking. Hope is to the future what memory is to the past. When you have a good memory, you can recall specific details about the past. You can envision them in your mind's eye, and you can root your sense of self and identity within past events. Hope, on the other hand, is the ability to imagine the future and your purpose within it, to project a vision of what might happen and then orient yourself towards those possibilities. Without hope, the future doesn't exist. Kristen R. Godsey makes this point really well in her book Everyday Utopia. Memory allows you to retrieve information you've learned in the past and use that information to interpret the world today. Hope allows you to set clear expectations for the future and to use those goals to determine your actions today. Memory also allows you to create a narrative about what you've been through and who you are because of those past experiences. Hope allows you to create a narrative about who you're becoming, to see yourself in the future and to act accordingly.
So hope is what enables us to be strategic.
Yup, hope is not just wishful thinking. Hope is our hidden potential. It often goes unnoticed, but you're probably more hopeful than you realize. We choose to believe in the future in small ways every day. We set our alarm clocks because we expect we're going to wake up tomorrow morning.
Or in my case, tomorrow afternoon.
And we set the alarm because we hope to start our day at a particular time and we need to get to work.
What if we don't like our work?
Well, what did I do the last time I didn't like my work?
You looked for a new job.
Yep, and we look for a new job because we assume we can find a better one, and our hope is to improve our life situation. And we expect that in the future, we'll still need money to live.
Hooray for capitalism.
Market capitalism is a miraculous system. Thank you very much. Miraculously exploitative.
Well, I like the ability to get ahead.
Hey, egos, do not get lost on a tangent. We can debate capitalism another time. Right now, we're talking about hope and belief in the future. Stay focused.
Well, capitalism only works if we believe in money. We can negotiate with money as payment because we expect that in the future that green paper rectangle with a dead president on it will actually be worth something to someone else. And we hope to exchange it in the future for the thing that we really want.
You're welcome. The question is, what is the picture of the future that we're envisioning? How will the economy function? Will money hold its value? Will I be able to find a job? Will I wake up tomorrow morning?
Afternoon.
What do we expect? Most of us expect to be able to wake up sometime tomorrow and carry on our lives. That's what we hope. We need that hope to do anything today, to keep ourselves alive, to keep moving forward. Hope is not optional. The question is, do we have the imagination to expand our hope outside of the realm of our own individual striving? It turns out we can work on being more hopeful. Psychologists believe that hope as a cognitive capacity can be trained. Studies show that hope therapy can reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. Hope therapy involves a variety of mental exercises, including seeing your own strengths, visualizing your goals, developing problem-solving methods, identifying potential obstacles, both internal and external, and imagining ways to overcome those obstacles. Hope is strengthened by the sense that you personally can have an effect on the world in the direction that you desire. That sense of your own effectiveness or efficacy is the muscle that gives you the strength to move forward. You can increase your efficacy by increasing your skills, your competence, and your knowledge of how exactly the world works and how exactly you can affect it. You start by taking on small challenges, building up confidence as you go, trying, struggling, persevering, and ultimately getting it done. Get her done! You gain wisdom and experience along the way, including by soaking up the wisdom of others. You know that you can do hard things because you've done them. You start to believe that you can overcome obstacles and hardship because you've gotten through them in the past.
So, hope is more active than optimism.
Yup. Optimism is the belief that somehow everything will turn out for the best. The future is bright. But hope is the belief that if we put in the work, we can make our situation better. Hope isn't about achieving perfection. It's about making improvement.
Hope is the mental and emotional bridge we need to get us to where we're going.
Hope believes in our ability to influence events and affect the course of our lives to reach a more desirable future. So one way to be more hopeful is to get specific about what exactly you want and how exactly you could move towards getting it. That's why having a strategy is so important, both in pushing for social change and in pushing forward in your own life. Hope is greater when you know what you believe in, how systems work, what strengths you bring to the table, and what obstacles you're likely to face. In other words, hope requires us to know what matters, what's possible, and what we can do about it. For example, right now, I'm hoping that I will finish this video essay series and that it will be well received. I have a clear mental vision of my goal of rolling out new episodes over the course of about a year and growing a community of critical and creative thinkers. I can imagine this partially because I'm drawing on my own experience producing shows and running communities in the past, so I know how the process of running a series works. I've also done my research on the educational video landscape, and I have a clear content strategy that takes potential challenges into account. I've also done my research on the topics I'll be covering: politics, society, and democracy. I'll link to my bibliography if you're curious what I've been reading. It's very long. I've been in the books, honey. All up in that library. I mean, a librarian like this. But even though I have these ideas, the series won't produce itself. With this vision in mind, I've needed to get up out of my nice warm bed and work to consistently read, write, plan, research, write some more, edit the script, get feedback, edit the script some more, film a prototype, decide I need to change the format, go back, rewrite the script, finish production design, finally film the video, edit all the pieces together. It's been quite a journey. But I've been focused on seeing the progress that I've made, and I've needed to be persistent even though things have taken much longer than I thought. Since I'm creating Bean Thinking like a proper show, it'll take me a couple months to really develop the concepts and ideas and the launch strategy. I'm hoping to do the official show launch later this year. And not even close. It's taken painfully long. I could have easily gotten discouraged or gotten distracted or given up, but I chose to press on because I believe in the potential impact the work could make, both in my own life and in the lives of others. Hope isn't just about believing that I can do it, it's about continuing in spite of the risk that maybe no one will watch the series, or it won't be financially sustainable, or maybe I'll run out of money before I can finish it.
Yeah, I'm not loving your current cash flow. The development timeline for these episodes is incredibly resource intensive. Sure, it's an investment, but I don't know when we'd see a profitable return. You are literally sinking money into creating a free educational resource. No one is paying you to watch these, so what's the point in making them?
The point is that the people deserve to know what's really going on. Knowledge is power, so we're sharing it. She's literally putting her money where her mouth is. Right on. Yes, I am. And if you wanted to support the show by joining the Brilliant Beans, I certainly wouldn't be mad at you. But I believe that my goal is so valuable that it's better to try and take a risk than to never have given it a chance at all. So I'm continuing to put in the work and buy my own time, despite the doubts that this whole thing might not work out. Well, what about the times when it doesn't work out? It seems naive to think that there's always the potential for a positive outcome. Sometimes you lose. We've seen time and time again how leaders have betrayed their people, how the powerful have hoarded resources, how protests fizzle out and go nowhere. It just doesn't feel like there's much of a point. Why bother trying if you always lose anyway? Well, that brings us to the main thing that threatens hope, and that is disappointment. Hope is, of course, more than a cognitive capacity. It's also an emotional state, and it can be hard to get ourselves to really feel it, especially when we feel constantly let down by our circumstances. Yeah, Sid's down in the dumps like all the time. Hey, the dumps has blankets and snacks, so I'm good. Which is fine, occasionally. I mean, hey, I love my comfort food just as much as the next person. Absolutely you do. But if I let Sid run my brain all the time, I would never get anything done. And that's the scary part. That's the primary threat to progress. Cynicism, disappointment, despair. They're all too tempting. Ah, yes, the temptation to accept defeat rather than push for progress. Giving up can seem like the easy option in the moment, but down the road it can lead to catastrophic results. One philosopher who thought quite a bit about the consequences of losing hope was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Philosopher? Yes, philosopher. What, you thought all he did was march and dream? He was a scholar who wrote several brilliant books. Yeah, I knew that. Well, in his final book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, he identifies the primary threat to hope as chronic disappointment. He says, one of the most agonizing problems of human experience is how to deal with disappointment. In our individual lives, we all too often distill our frustrations into an essence of bitterness, or drown ourselves in the deep waters of self-pity, or adopt a fatalistic philosophy that whatever happens must happen and all events are determined by necessity. These reactions poison the soul and scar the personality, always harming the person who harbors them more than anyone else. The only healthy answer lies in one's honest recognition of disappointment, even as he still clings to hope. Dr. King illustrated what I'll call the downward spiral of disappointment, where being continuously disappointed in government and in society leads to a loss of hope, which leads to distrust, which leads to cynicism, which eventually leads to a vortex of despair that can stop us from being able to move forward. Despair destroys our potential. It eliminates the possibility for a better future. Naive pessimism can be just as fatal as naive optimism. Despair leads us to destroy the potential for progress in 3 directions. The first is standing still. Despair can lead you to inertia. You think that nothing is possible, so you do nothing. You become trapped in nihilism and fatalism, and you go nowhere. Second, despair can lead you to turn inward, to self-pity, paranoid victimhood, and social withdrawal. You eat away at your own psyche, you isolate yourself, and you make yourself incapable of stepping into your own power. And third, despair can lead to lashing outward. We turn our energy not to figuring out and addressing the root causes of a problem, which in despair we suppose can never be fixed, but to bitterness and hatred of the people who we blame for social problems. Lashing out in hatred eventually leads to social violence, endless war, and mutual annihilation.
Well, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, how do we not do that?
Well, Dr. King said that we have to acknowledge disappointment while still clinging to hope.
Yeah, exactly how are we supposed to cling to hope, especially in this economy?
He didn't exactly say. He was focused on having the visionary ideals.
Having ideals is important because the ideal lets us know if we're headed in the right direction. In order to make progress, we have to know what we're aiming for.
But I think there's more to it than that.
Yes, we need a strategy for dealing with hopelessness, both on the emotional side and on the cognitive side.
Yeah, the emotional side of hope and the cognitive side of hope are connected. One reinforces the other. So if we can get ourselves emotionally out of a pessimistic funk, that could help us in thinking through a more hopeful perspective.
Didn't you used to make mental health and wellness videos on your other channel?
I did, although those speak to a more personal context than a social context, but I'll link a playlist in the description if you're curious. Well, within this larger social context, one thing we can do on the emotional side is to release judgment of our own life situation.
Wow, Justina talking about refraining from judgment.
Yeah, you're her moral conscience. Isn't it literally your job to judge Ahsante's life? No, I'm here to help Ahsante make judgments about what actions she should take in her life, not to judge her life as a whole. You really can't judge a life until it's over and you've seen the consequences. We had another discussion about that, remember?
Oh, right.
Of course, when it comes to your own actions and decisions, you want to make good ones. You want to make moral and practical judgments based on the options and information you happen to have at the time. That's what I'm about. But we don't have perfect information, or all the options we might like. When we judge external life events or things beyond our control as good or bad, we judge prematurely. None of us knows the exact course our life narrative will take, so it can be wise to refrain from judgment when seemingly bad things happen. Ah, yes, when we look at life's events and say, this is bad, we then start to feel bad about them. We lower our own spiritual energy and can start getting sucked into that vortex of despair. Resenting our situation is a form of resisting reality, feeling like it shouldn't be happening. Instead of resisting events, we can flow through them like water, like in the Taoist parable of the farmer.
What's the parable of the farmer?
Well, there once was a farmer who had a horse that had worked his crops for years. One day his horse ran away. His neighbor said, "Oh, that's such bad luck." The farmer said, "Maybe." The next day the horse came back and brought along with it 3 other wild horses. His neighbor said, "Wow, 3 more horses, that's so great." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, his son was trying to ride and tame one of the horses, and the horse threw him off and the son broke his leg. The neighbor said, "Oh, that's too bad." The farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, there was a military draft announced, but the son wasn't enlisted to fight since he had broken his leg. The neighbor said, "Wow, that's so lucky." The farmer said, "Maybe." Ah, good old disassociation. Nothing matters.
Sounds to me like the farmer's in denial.
My point isn't to deny your feelings or that nothing matters. Actions do have consequences, and feelings can be important signals that things need to change. Feel your feelings. Like we said, part of the process is acknowledging disappointment. Journaling, therapy, there are several ways to get your emotions out on the table. But once they're out, you can examine them and decide what to do about them. You can decide whether the feelings are justified or not. They don't have to control you. The point is to not get overly attached to your feelings. As my mother used to say when she was trying to diffuse a childhood temper tantrum, don't get excited, don't get upset.
Ah, I see. When we get less emotionally attached to life's course, we can recognize disappointment but avoid despair. We can emotionally move forward.
Exactly. So, one tactic when you're feeling hopeless is to examine any emotional labeling or judgment you may be doing, even if unconsciously. Just because a situation didn't meet your expectations doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. We of course have to deal with the present, but the future only exists in our imagination. We don't actually know how the future will turn out, so we can't claim to know that it will definitely turn out for the worse. And there's always the possibility that we could take some small step towards making it better. And that goes hand in hand with raising your hope in the cognitive sense, thinking about the future and how you can get there. We become particularly disappointed and hopeless about the persistence of social injustice when we lose sight of three things. One, we don't know what ideal quality of life is valuable enough to make the struggle worth it. We don't know what's important. We lack social values. When two, we don't know what kind of society we should be realistically looking to create. We don't know what particular future is possible. We lack vision. And when three, we don't have accurate expectations of how social change really happens and how we can effectively wield our own power. We don't know what we can do about it. We don't have a mission. We lack efficacy. So it can help to take a step back and think about what values are important, what future is possible, and what we can do about it. Crafting a worldview for ourselves that speaks to these three elements will help us to maintain our hope as a mental and emotional state. We'll write a narrative for our lives that gives us a chance at a happier ending. So those are concrete ways to increase our own sense of hope, to do a bit of hope self-therapy on a social scale. In addition to avoiding a premature emotional judgment of our situation, we can think through those three things. We can clarify our values, which means doing the work of really figuring out what we believe in. We can imagine what's possible, which requires having an accurate understanding of historical cause and effect. We need to know what really went on in the past and what's really happening in the present.
An overly critical view of a rotten history distorts reality by erasing progress and condemning humans as fundamentally immoral. It shuts down the possibility of improvement and leads us to despair. An overly idealized view of a glorious history distorts reality by erasing human suffering and worshiping human invention. It suggests that nothing needs to fundamentally change, and in fact, it might be better to go backwards. To have the hope we need to move forward, we need to be able to draw lessons from history as it actually happened, with all its complexities and nuances.
And third, we can figure out what we can actually do, which requires learning how to effectively maneuver through systems of power. We'll be talking more about what matters, what's possible, and what we can do about it throughout this video series. There's a lot to unpack in each area. But overall, I started to release naive pessimism and really feel this more hopeful perspective when I recognized these three key points. First, things do change. History is not predetermined, and people are not only motivated by greed. We'll be talking about what motivates greed and corruption in another episode. But individual behavior has a lot to do with the current systems and structures of power, and those systems can change over time. The second point is to realize that as long as you're an independent person, you do have some degree of power and agency to affect your situation, even if it's only the ability to change your own internal mental and emotional state. You can choose how to interpret the things that happen to you. You are the only person who can make up your own mind. And third, for as long as humans are imperfect, there will be temptation and conflict and disappointment. Those things are a part of life. They're features of human existence and not defects. We live in a consumer culture that suggests that life should be easy, fun, and convenient. But in pulling ourselves towards hope, we can remind ourselves that yes, dealing with other people is hard.
People get on my nerves.
But we can do hard things, and that liberty and justice for all people is something worth fighting for. Or you can make like Sid and wallow away in despair while you stay on the couch.
It's very comfortable, intellectually easy, and like I said, we have snacks.
The choice is up to you. I'll let you make up your own mind. Think about it. And that's the very first episode of Open Mind here on Bean Thinking. Whoop whoop. We finally got it out there. Let's go. Enormous thank you to New America for providing the seed funding for this show through their Us at 250 fellowship.
Yes, bless the funders. Gotta count that money, honey.
I started developing the show myself in 2022, but I was able to work on it full time for the past year and really bring it to life thanks to New America.
I mean, we'd be stuck here in Ahsante's brain either way.
But we wouldn't be talking to you without their support. So thank you to New America. And I am hoping to be able to continue this work for years to come with the support of viewers like you. So I want to thank my membership community, the Brilliant Beans. Shout out to the Ride or Die. Shout out to the A1s from Day Ones. And thank you so much for watching. Feel free to share this video with a friend if it made you think. I'm trying to spread the word about this brand new channel, and what motivates my career is creating media as a public service. So I want these videos to be helpful and informative to as many people as possible. I am so excited for y'all to see what else I have in store. In the meantime, remember to think critically and creatively, and I will see you next time.